Every day when we went to Chinese school, the teacher would introduce the lesson to us by reading it, and we would sit there and listen. And after that, we would recite it like sentence for sentence, like 第一課, we would say 第一課, and then she would say 上學去 or something, and then we would say 上學去, and the whole class would just recite it. And after that, and by the way, while she's doing that, all of us are frantically trying to write down the phonetics, the English phonetics next to each word, because we were petrified of the teacher. Somehow the teacher gave off this presence that you were really kind of scared to ask any questions or anything. It was very strict. I remember not liking Chinese school when I was young. In American school, we were able to move around more, and we had more chances to interact with other students, and I wasn't afraid to speak, you know, or we had just different activities. We had experiments and things like that, whereas Chinese school, you just sat there and wrote, just listen, like a lecture type, a direct teaching style. I think children would choose American schools over Chinese school because, like I said, the rigidity, if there's such a word, of the setting of Chinese school is so not flexible. You'd be sitting there all day long and just listening to the teacher lecture and just doing all the drills and practices. Whereas in American school, you had more varied activities where you get to do hands-on activities. You sometimes would change subjects, you know, you're not doing language the whole day.
Boy, are you lucky. You don't have to come here anymore. I can't wait till regular school starts. Then it's going to be only 2 hours.
The way I've been teaching Chinese has been a whole process in evolution. Because I had a lack of materials as well as lack of experience as my first year teaching, my Chinese lesson basically turned into like an agonizing 10 to 15 minutes per day of take out your green ARC books and I'll read the lesson to you, and then they read after me, just like how I learned in Chinese school. Exactly.
你對他說什麼呢？即係你對他講乜嘢啊？謝謝。乜嘢？嚇？謝謝。你對他講謝謝 ，OK。咁你講啦，寫啦，謝謝。謝謝邊個啊？謝謝媽媽。謝謝媽媽好啦。
Now, I spend 1 hour each day devoted to Chinese language development. For example, we have a sign in my classroom that says 中文時間. Obviously, it's written in Chinese, which means Chinese time. And the kids will be reminded that this is Chinese time.
小朋友，而家係咩時間啊？坐低。中文時間。咁我哋而家講中文還是英文啊？中文。
The separation of language is very important, not only for the students, the teachers too, because a lot of times, you know, I'm tempted to use English too during Chinese time. So number one, it keeps both the children and the teacher accountable. It's also important because it forces us to think and process in that targeted language.
感嘆號，感嘆這本書真好。
So we won't mix the languages so that we can develop fully, you know, our thoughts in one language. Other things that have changed in terms of how I teach Chinese has to do with my experience as a teacher of English. I began to look at how kids learn in English. I realized that kids learn a lot from a fun and print-rich environment. They need a lot of opportunities to experiment with the language in various fun literacy activities, like in centers. They want things that are relevant to them, things that they like. They needed skills and words taught in the context of a story that they were interested in. I started to engage students in Chinese using the same strategies and activities as I did during English time. Reading the room, reading all the Chinese that's posted around the room. Daily news in Chinese as well, which is like a shared writing experience.
校，有個校字。木字點解有木字邊啊？
咩係攞木嚟做嘅？
或者用啲木嚟做嘅，係啊。Okay.
I think ever since I started to engage the kids in Chinese learning centers with fun activities, I definitely and honestly can say that they enjoy learning Chinese so much more because it's like a game to them. And not only do the kids enjoy it more, I, Miss Tong, enjoy it way more too. And I think that the energy is transferred to the kids.
其實你哋翻去啦。逗號啊，問號啊，係咪嗰啲啊？
And so all these games and activities that I developed for the centers in my classroom, they all grew out of my guided reading practice. And this is how I do guided reading. I get a book, which I know is challenging to the kids, but it's also a book that's comfortable for them.
我以前細個都中意玩一陣先瞓覺嘅喎，你有冇試過咧？
Before I hold up the book, I would kind of activate their prior knowledge. I would ask them questions that pertains to the story. And then I would show them the cover, and then we would just basically discuss the picture. And I would ask them to try to read the title, and if not, I would just tell them what the title is.
唔要好啦，呢個故事咧就係叫做我不要睡，我不要睡，即係我唔要瞓覺喎。好啦，
And maybe we would predict
見到乜嘢
what this book is about.
係
一個老虎。
哦，個獅子，一隻獅子係咪啊嚇？
And then we would do a picture walk or a story walk, which
有
means
乜嘢嚟㗎？你
I'm just going to go through each page of the story. I would just cover the text and I would ask them, what do you think is happening here on this page? Ideally, I would try to elicit from them the text.
我不想要水。
嚇？
我不想水。
And if they don't use it, I would throw it in so that they would have that knowledge already in their head when they have to read it later on.
遊戲機係叫做電子遊戲機，你得唔得講一次啊？電子遊戲機，你哋屋企有冇呢啲電子遊戲機㗎？
So, you know, we would go through the picture walk until the end of the story,
好啦，我讀
and we would predict what would happen.
嚇，佢已經做咩啊？
And I would ask them to comment on the story. Did you like it?
點解佢會咁快瞓咗嘅？
好眼瞓。
好眼瞓。
And so afterwards, they should have had a thorough idea of what the story is about, and they have the text, you know, or the vocabulary, hopefully, in their minds.
電子遊戲機。
好叻，睇下啲圖畫，如果你唔記得佢係講乜嘢嘅。
And so then I would give each student a book, and I would have them read it by themselves. I would remind them to point to each word, and I would remind them to look for 3 kinds of clues. Picture clue, the like context clue, like what makes sense in the sentence, and also those decoding clues with the radical and with the root sound.
哎呀，非常
I believe there is a correlation in terms of decoding words in English as well as in Chinese. These are called 形聲字, like 形 is the shape. You look at the shape and then you will know the sound, which is sing, 形聲字. So it's like shape, sound, words. So, you know, every time we come upon a word that is new to them and we recognize the root of it, we say, hey, we've learned this before. What is this root word sound? So what do you think this word might sound like? So that has helped them, quote unquote, sound out words in Chinese. Obviously, it doesn't work as beautifully for every single word, but there's other clues that would help them in understanding a word, and that you would look at the radical of a word.
黃耀明，你得乜讀嗰個字出嚟啊？
屋字。
嚇？
屋字。
係啊，非常好。
I believe that I need to teach it to them now. So after that, I would read it and let them hear it, and then they would read it after me.
不，我要活砌積木。
Just like in Chinese school, because I feel that's very necessary.
我話啊，
And then after that, we would also go through the meaning. Like, you know, if there's a strange sentence structure or a new sentence structure,
睡着了，非常好。小朋友睡着了點解啊？你諗睡着了點解？睡點解啊？
瞓覺。
瞓覺睡着啦，睡着了，睡即係瞓着咗啦。你有冇講瞓着咗㗎？
so after that whole process is through, we would play a game, like looking for a word.
邊度？邊個係個學字？哇，好叻喎！你哋點知道嗰個係個學字嚟㗎？
不，我要學。
但係你睇呢個字點樣寫法，你點知嗰個係個學字？
口字。
嚇？
個口字。
有個口字邊係喎，咁小朋友有邊位小朋友可以揾到個口字嗰個部首啊？
I would like them to tell me like what kind of clues they used to find this word. And also, where have you seen this word? Because I always like for them to link that word back to where they've used it before.
做完，咁嗰個字係咩字嚟㗎？
And so after this whole process is through, they would have to take this book and read it with their partner. So they would get practice reading it.
第一個跌倒的是小文。第一個哭的是小文。你要吃點芝士嗎？不要。
So the next series of lesson I would do is revisit the same book, and I would have them, read it to me again. And this time I would do like a sequencing activity. Like I have them sequence these pictures according, to practice their oral skill. I would say the text, and so they would have to use their listening skills. They would put it out. And then next I would see if they know how to read the text by matching the text with the picture.
而家講緊乜嘢？發生咩事啊？
來啦，小咩咪來吃。
非常好，你企到好嬲啊！你好嬲啊！而家好啦，最後啦，
不要，我想吃我的晚餐。
非常好。啊，小朋友，俾你哋一個手掌，因為你做得好好。
And then I would maybe have a sequence of other activities for them at another center, like maybe work on this sentence structure or innovate on this story, which is like taking the same kind of storyline or same sentence structure, but changing it or innovating it a little to pertain to them. So let's say, 弟弟穿衣, maybe they put their own name on it or change the ending or something. And these stories they read over and over again at their reading corner. So whatever stories they've read, they build on it. Every time they go to the reading corner, they would have to read all the stories that we've read up to now. So that's basically my guided reading. And I think if students had learned Chinese in an American school setting, the maintenance of their Chinese would definitely be heightened because they would see Chinese used holistically. They would use Chinese in our discussions. We would use Chinese like at play in the yard, or we would use Chinese to reason, or use Chinese to solve math problems or do science experiments. So Chinese would be like an integral part of their lives if they continue to learn Chinese this way. Not only in elementary school, I believe they would have to continue in middle school as well as high school. Their Chinese would be wonderful. I mean, be so high. They would be very fully, bilingual, biliterate in both Chinese and English.
想報仇注意調查，你又測，我又測，千記住唔落測，保持棚牙同健康，早上傍晚到調查。